Yes, it's another new album from indie rocker Ryan Adams, his third this year, and there's still more to come. Let's tune into his latest frequency on the FM band. My review is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle, and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. 2005 was my year of Ryan Adams, the year when I first truly discovered his music. I'd heard the album Gold maybe once before, as well as Rock and Roll, but neither had made much of an impact on me. It wasn't until I listened to the Heartbreaker album in the spring of 2005 that it all clicked for me. After that, I went back and fell in love with Gold and Rock and Roll, plus Demolition and Love is Hell, and of course the Whiskey Town albums. But there was barely time to let all of that sink in before Adams' first epic trilogy began with the incredible Cold Roses in May, Jacksonville City Nights in September, and 29 in December. In retrospect, it was actually nice to get a year-and-a-half break after that to fully absorb all this music before his next album came in the summer of 2007. If there's one word to describe Ryan Adams that probably all of his fans would agree on, it's prolific. The only other artist I can think of that could have matched or exceeded the sheer volume of Adams' creative output would be Prince. Fast forward to 2022, and we're in the middle of what is shaping up to be Adams' biggest year ever in terms of musical output. In March, he released the double album Chris, the long-awaited closing chapter of the musical trilogy that included Wednesdays in 2020 and Big Colors in 2021. Then, just a month later, Adams surprise released Romeo and Juliet, yet another new double album. Now, just over 3 months later, FM arrives, a single album that feels almost modest in comparison to its girthy predecessors. Still to come in 2022 are another studio album called 1985, from which Adams has already released a single, as well as what Adams describes as a big-ass deluxe live album, likely recorded during his recent return to Carnegie Hall. So for those keeping score, that's 2 double albums, 2 single albums, and 1 deluxe live album, all within a single year. Needless to say, it can be hard to keep up with Ryan Adams. That's exactly why I didn't end up reviewing the Romeo and Juliet album here on this channel. Following one double album with another just a month later was, well, it was a lot. And I do regret that I wasn't able to give Romeo and Juliet a timely and proper review, because I actually think it was the best thing he'd released since Prisoner in 2017. But I also have to say, sometimes too much of a good thing just becomes too much. Both double albums, Chris and Romeo and Juliet, were really solid albums, but I think both of them would have benefited from some editing as well as having a longer span of time between their releases. Relative to that pace and volume, the 3-month wait for the new single album, FM, feels like an eternity. But I'm actually grateful for that, for both the time gap, such as it was, as well as the single album length. In fact, I think one of the new album's biggest strengths is the fact that its shorter length helps Adams sustain a cohesive feeling from start to finish. It feels like a true album rather than just a collection of songs. Adams has, of course, been leaning heavily into the 80s vibes on his most recent releases, and that trend continues on FM. The album kicks off with I Want You, which effectively sets the tone. There's definitely some strong big star vibes here, which technically is more of a 70s power pop thing, but the 80s flavor is still unmistakable. It reminds me a lot of some of the jams Matthew Sweet was putting out in the 90s. The problem is, this kind of music really cries out for much brighter production, and that's just not one of Adams' strengths. As a result, the backing vocal harmonies are completely buried in the mix, and the drums sound like they were recorded inside a cardboard box. Next, on Love Me Don't, Adams leans hard into the sound of early 80s rockers like The Knack or The Romantics. And not just in the music, actually. There's a decidedly whiny characteristics to his vocals here that I'm not sure we've heard from Adams before. That's not a bad thing, by the way. I dig it. I think it lends some authenticity to the track. And by the way, is this the first time Ryan Adams has referenced Batman in his lyrics? Name-dropping superheroes seems like something he'd have done before, but I might have missed it. Fantasy File is next at track 3, and for me, this is far and away the biggest highlight of the album. Not only is this the most fully formed track on FM, it's also simply a really great song. The 80s vibe rolls on with those terrific sax lines that make this one a total winner. I could absolutely have heard this on the radio back in the day, fighting for a top spot on the rock charts alongside Tom Petty or the Greg Kihn Band. Great stuff for sure. Next up is When She Smiles, which you got to admit is just about as 80s hair band ballad as song titles get. Of course, it sounds nothing like that, but maybe that's a vibe for his next record. Anyway, I'm immediately taken by the poetry of the opening lyric. Adams sings, "Suddenly she's smiling at me like I'm supposed to remember." It's a beautiful line, sung over a ringing Byrds-style guitar riff. To be fair, it's not a new sound for an Adams song. We've certainly heard it on many of his songs before, and better ones at that. There was promise at the start, but things get pretty cornball by the second verse when he's rhyming "totally awesome" with "flowers have blossomed." I do like the soaring vocal at the end of the bridge, but otherwise this turns out to be a fairly paint-by-numbers kind of track. Then on Hall of Shame, Adams delivers some of the most evocative lyrics on the album, with some clever bits of wordplay. I like the way the first verse references playing the A side, and then the second verse brings things back around to the B side. There's some nice visual storytelling going on here as well. The problem is the underlying music is fairly mundane and repetitive, devoid of anything dynamic or melodic until after the final chorus ends and things veer into Smith's territory. It's a shame the entire song didn't tap into what gets uncovered only at the end, because this last 45 seconds is one of the most exquisite sonic moments on the entire record. Wild and Hopeless marks the halfway point on FM, and although you know I'm a CD guy, I do still think of albums in that side 1, side 2 context. I appreciate when an album sequence feels like there's a natural break to flip over the record, or cassette in this case, since that's the only physical format available right now. Anyway, the opening guitar stabs on Wild and Hopeless are side 2, track 1 perfection. From there on out, though, the song is a bit of a mess. Lyrically, I feel like there's so many missed opportunities. On the chorus, he repeatedly makes a metaphorical reference to being in the candy aisle, but he never builds on the lyrical promise of that concept. Then musically, he manages to pack in not one, but 2 distinctly different guitar solos in a song that clocks in under 3 minutes. Feels like there's a lot of random ideas here, some of them quite good, but none of them fully developed. That underdeveloped sensation continues on So Dumb. I have to say, there's a nice crunchy guitar sound on this track that I really dig. It definitely calls to mind another musical Adams, in fact. Musically, this is a really solid rocker, but lyrically and vocally, there's just nothing to hold your interest. The song lacks any kind of hook to make it memorable. So Dumb has a lyrical first draft feeling to it, like everything he's singing is just temporary until he comes up with better words. Yet, here we are. Fortunately, another album highlight shows up with Fairweather on track 8. The song is built upon a lush Smith-style soundscape, a vibe Adams channels exceptionally well. I really like the way the ringing guitar melody creates the perfect accompaniment for his soaring vocals on the chorus. And like Hall of Shame a few tracks earlier, we get a gorgeous instrumental passage on the fade-out, only here it feels like it belongs, like it's a natural progression rather than an overdue burst of inspiration. The penultimate track on FM is the rock and stomp anthem, Do You Feel? There's some really nice guitar work going on here, highlighted by the frenetic solo on the bridge, and then the Octung Baby style extended solo on the fade-out. Musically, I feel like this is one of the stronger tracks on the album, but lyrically, again, nothing seems to carry as much weight. I mean, the vocals are actually solid here, and as an instrument, they mesh well with the sound as a whole. But I wish the actual lyrics had more substance to them, something to remember, to draw you back to listen again, because otherwise it's just that one song, you know? When you listen to the album again and the track starts, you say, oh, this is that one song, I dig this. But then you forget it almost as soon as it's over. That's a shame, because music this strong deserves lyrics to match. That conflict of strong music clashing with insipid lyrics reaches a climax on Someday, the album's final track, featuring what must be the most head-scratching opening line of a song I've heard in as long as I can remember. Like a kick to the nuts with the house on fire. Wow, Suddenly those underdeveloped candy aisle metaphors earlier on the album don't seem so egregious. Thematically, there's a solid, or at least semi-solid idea behind the lyrics here, even if they are betrayed by the seeming juvenilia of that opening line. Musically, this song feels more aligned with Adams' two previous albums from earlier this year. And like nearly every track on those two song cycles, this song suffers from total reverb saturation. If you listen closely, there's some nice melodic touches buried in the soupy sonic mix, like the piano accents that nearly disappear in the echo. Alright, so here we are at the end of the third Ryan Adams album to be released in a single year, following of course two double albums. It's a lot of music. And of those three albums, I think this one is the most successful at feeling like a complete album. I think it is easily the most cohesive group of songs he's released so far this year. That being said, there's not much on this album that reaches the sometimes exceptional level of songcraft that was displayed on both Chris and Romeo and Juliet. To be fair, perhaps the sheer volume of songs on those two albums inherently made it more likely for there to be more true gems. But honestly, I think the biggest issue here is too many of these songs simply don't feel fully developed, especially in the lyrics. There's a lot of interesting musical ideas to be found on this song cycle, but few of them seem to be fully baked. I'll admit I enjoy many of them in the moment, but in more cases than not, I've forgotten the song as soon as the last note fades out. It makes the whole thing feel more like a B-sides collection, or Demolition Volume 2. And even Demolition was more fully developed than this. So I'm giving FM by Ryan Adams an X rating of 6 out of 10. It's a brisk album that's long on retro vibes, but sadly short on substance and songcraft. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.